Hello, I'm Hyun Cho, a virtual reality researcher and a media artist. Today, I'm going to present a study I conducted with Professor Bernhard Riecke at Simon Fraser University, titled Social VR and the Paradox of Connection: How Communication Barriers Enhance Interaction. There's a Korean proverb that says, people don't recognize the advent of being, but recognize the absence of being. There's a similar saying in English, absence makes the heart grow fonder. Similarly, we often realize the true value of something only when it is no longer there. During the pandemic, we realized that we had taken in-person interactions for granted. That unique period made us appreciate the true value of connection through its absence. In this context, various attempts have been made to replicate in-person communication. One such attempt was Social VR. Social VR is a platform that enables communication through avatars in virtual environments. Examples include Meta Horizon and Mozilla Hubs. In the midst of pandemic, people actively utilize these forms of remote communication, but post-pandemic, the majority of people wanted to return to in-person forms of socializing. This is due to several innate drawbacks that comes with remote communication, such as a lack of nonverbal cues like eye contact, facial expressions, and gestures. Previous research on VR communication has focused on overcoming this limitation by realistically reproducing real-world communication in virtual environments. However, due to physical constraints such as the weight of the VR headset, external noise, and graphic performance, perfectly replicating reality in VR is difficult. So rather than trying to compensate for reality's limitation, we propose a different approach, one that actively leverages them. Instead of focusing on reproducing reality in VR, we explore the unique communication method that only VR can offer. Can intentionally designed communication barrier in social VR help increase users' desires to connect and foster meta-reflection on communication? This study explores how disruptions of connection in VR environments affect user experience. We tend to perceive words like absence, lack, distance, and discomfort negatively, although these conditions do not always lead to negative outcomes. According to evolutionary psychologist John Cacioppo and neuroscientist Matthew Lieberman, humans are innately social beings who seek connection. When we experience social exclusion, the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex in the brain activates, the same region that responds to physical pain. In other words, loneliness is not just an emotion, it acts as a warning signal for survival, prompting us to reconnect. Kip Williams's cyberwar experiment shows that such responses also occur in virtual environments. Even when participants were excluded from a simple online ball tossing game, they reported emotional pain similar to real-world social rejection. This provides important grounds for our hypothesis in later projects, which deals with this theme of intentional disconnection. Even in VR, people instinctively seek connection and are motivated to act on it. Such examples where absence and disconnection trigger new thoughts and behavior can also be found in art. German playwright Bertolt Brecht used a technique called the distancing effect. By breaking the audience's immersion, he encouraged them to step back and think about the social issue outside the play. Tragedy recurs in films and games as well. For instance, Jean-Luc Godard's movie Vivre sa vie breaks narrative continuity and the forced words to unsettle viewers' immersion. The game Getting Over It by Bennett uses repeated failure to prompt introspection rather than immersion. In other words, design that disrupts immersion can foster deeper reflection. And based on this theoretical background, we hypothesized that a lack of communication could stimulate users' desire to connect and provide insight into communication method. To test this, we designed two experimental social VR projects, ISEA and Space Echo. First project, ISEA, is a multiplayer VR experience. Two participants enter separate physical spaces. Each participant wears a VR headset and a respiration sensor. The user's breathing patterns are captured by a sensor and reflected in the VR environment through the pass-through lens. When the participants hold their breath, their avatar gradually becomes transparent, while the virtual environment fades in. Conversely, when they breathe, their avatar becomes visible, and the virtual environment fades out to reveal the real world. Only when one user holds their breath while the other breathes can they see each other. Moments when both users can see each other are rare. If the timing is off, they might not even realize the other person is there. Through this, ISEA shows us that being in the same space doesn't guarantee real connection. It takes future effort and a bit of luck. Next one is Space Echo. Space Echo is a multiplayer VR experience. In this world, the more you talk, the further you drift from your partner. Inside Space Echo, participants wear jetpacks that are powered by their voices. Unlike typical jetpacks that propel you forward, these jetpacks push you in the opposite direction of where you're looking. As a result, participants start the experience facing each other, but the more they speak, the further they drift apart. During the exhibition, we observed how participants reacted. I noticed that once users realized they were not alone in the virtual space, they became more engaged and stayed longer. Even without any instruction, they tried to find each other and move closer. They described nearby objects and their location to help them navigate. Space Echo revealed that intentional constraint can spark a stronger desire for collaboration. So, both ISEA and Space Echo experimented with intentional communication disruption. However, user reactions were significantly different. ISEA used an asynchronous system based on breath control. To see other person, user had to hold their breath, which required cognitive effort, leading many to feel fatigue. Space Echo, on the other hand, had a simple rule: the more you speak, the more you move away. Users quickly grasped the system and voluntarily engaged in cooperative behavior. From this, we derived our following design insights. First, complex non-intuitive system can cause user dropout. Second, simple rules and immediate feedback facilitate connection. Third, even without explicit mission, relationship-centered design encourages voluntary cooperation. Based on this insight, we designed a more structured user study to test the effect of communication disruption. We recruited 30 participants and used a within-subject design where each pair experienced both movement conditions. The order of conditions was counterbalanced to control for sequence effect. After each condition, participants completed a short interview to provide qualitative feedback on their experience. The controller-based movement condition, users moved their avatars using VR controller buttons, and the jetpack functioned in the forward direction. In the reverse jetpack conditions, users moved through voice input, and the jetpack pushed them backward. Each session lasted about 10 minutes. During that time, pairs explored the virtual space and tried to find each other. To encourage communication, we added a cooperative task. When two avatars got close, a question appeared on the screen to prompt dialogue. Following are key findings from the experiment. Discomfort sparks tragedy. Many participants initially found the reverse jetpack condition strange and awkward. However, most attempted to adapt, developing new communication strategies like remaining silent, using gestures, and adjusting voice volume. These responses indicate that the discomfort acted not as barrier but as a catalyst for creative interaction. Emotional ambivalence and diverging outcomes. Interestingly, emotional responses varied widely, even under same condition. Some found the discomfort fun and said it made them feel closer to their unfamiliar partner. Others reported fatigue and disconnection. These ambivalent responses show that constraints do not always lead to positive outcomes and that user experience quality is affected by various factors. Reflection on communication. Some participants commented that the experience resembled digital communication. This reflection suggests that the Space Echo 2.0 can serve as a meta experience, encouraging reflections on communication itself. Overall, this finding highlights how user responses are highly context dependent. Under the same conditions, some participants perceived the given challenge as playful and engaging experience, and while others felt drained and disconnected. This divergence appears to stem from users' personality traits like openness to challenge, emotional sensitivity, interpersonal familiarity, for example, close friend versus strangers, and VR experience level, like novices versus experienced users. In other words, the same design condition can yield completely different outcomes depending on the user. Thus, design discomfort must be carefully calibrated to user characteristics and the context to be meaningful. But this study has several limitations. It is a small case qualitative study limited to apnea and space echo and does not control for individual differences such as relationship, intimacy, personality, and VR experience. So, future research on this topic should aim to incorporate behavior data such as eye tracking, speech volume, and proximity. For a more comprehensive approach, comparative experiments on different types of disruptive mechanisms are also needed. Additionally, we hope to explore how this creative design approach can be also applied to domains like games, remote education, and mental health. So for the conclusion, I'd like to say, sometimes I miss the days when we waited for text messages, not even knowing if they've been read. Connection was slower then, but somehow it felt deeper. Now we are always connected, but often we feel more isolated. So maybe it's time to stop designing for convenience and start designing for meanings. Social VR design isn't just about functionality. It's about rethinking how we shape our relationships. Thank you for listening.